We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Supernatural Hour. I am your host, Castle. And with me tonight, we have got Raven.
Hello.
We have got Rogue.
Hi.
Which is not Ray-Ban, by the way. Someone thought I said Ray-Ban, like sunglasses.
No, just
not
Raven.
So much. And then we have everybody's favorite stepdad named Chad.
Hey.
I think every stepdad in the world is named Chad or Brad. Those are like the world's two stepdad names.
The stepdad name.
And they're always a-holes. So if you're cool Chad or cool Brad, I'm sorry, but yeah.
There must be a story there.
Oh, no, I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and that's like the universal stepdad name. Chad or Brad?
No, Chad is the male version of Karen.
Oh, there you go. I can see that.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, it's good to be back and to hijack your show for a minute. Thank you for letting me do that.
We're glad to have you.
We have a guest host today.
That'd be me, Castle. And those who've been with the show for a long time know me because I was on the show for, 3-4 years?
Oh, yeah, at least.
5 years? However long the show's been around.
Castle was one of the founders. Well, he was the founder.
It's been in just the last year that I've been gone, but we can talk about that in a minute.
Our paranormal junk drawer tonight. I think one of these days it could make an awesome, whole full episode, but we're going to give you the condensed version today. It's 10 paranormal myths. Now, whether you think it's a myth or not, I will leave that up to you.
Okay.
So the first one says paranormal facts exist. Now, this is one that I might disagree with a little bit. We did say, it's kind of hard to prove, but I feel like in some ways you've gotten proof. And I feel like proof is very personal because I've seen things that I can't really explain to anybody, and no one can see the same thing I'm seeing at the same time I'm seeing it. I think I've gotten proof. But it says the term paranormal applies to anything currently beyond the range of scientific explanation. What they're saying is if you can't utilize a scientific method in a certain way that you can't prove paranormal. I tend to cry false on this myth, but there you go. It's number one.
I don't know that you can necessarily prove it, but that doesn't mean you have disproved it either.
Right.
Because there were lots of things as you go back through scientific history that couldn't be proved, and now we do them all the time, like talking on telephones.
Right. So that's one that I kind of, I don't know. I think you can, I have some facts. Whether or not it can be done perfectly with the scientific method, I don't know. But anyway. Number 2, ghosts only come out at night.
That's false.
Yep. And that's definitely a myth. Nighttime, I think, can be easier because sounds carry better. It's dark. You're focused. You can see orbs and tracers with your naked eye a lot easier.
Right. We're using a lot more power. It's easier for them to energize. We've got a lot more electricity.
Right. But I have had some of my best ghostly encounters during the day.
Right.
So the first full body apparition I saw was at lunchtime.
I think the biggest reason people think that ghostly encounters only happen at night is because that's when things are spooky and you've kind of got the heebie-jeebies because it's dark outside. And I think it's more of a psychological thing for the living that ghosts only come out at night versus reality because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, and I think also it's quieter. You're winding down. You don't have all the other distractions.
Neighbors not out mowing the lawn at midnight.
Yeah.
Unless they're crazy.
So you may hear things that you didn't plan to hear.
Right. So another myth, and this one I might call bogus on too, just my personal beliefs, but whatever. There is no physical evidence of Bigfoot.
Well, we need Doc here today for this one.
I know. But he said, the paper that I read said...
Them.
The theys said there's not been any bodies found, but Bigfoot researchers claim there's quite a bit of physical evidence, including hair, blood, tissue tracks, and yes, poop.
Oh.
So if they can say that's evidence, then I don't know why my ghostly apparitions can't be evidence. But hey, whatever.
And the poop one has me fascinated, and not because I'm 14 years old, but it has me fascinated because how do you prove that's Bigfoot poop?
That's Bigfoot scat.
Exactly.
I don't know, but remember from our previous podcast that Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They are now allowing you to buy hunting licenses for Bigfoot.
So, Castle, there you go. You got your opportunity.
Hey, go get some pictures for your...
Get arrested for poaching.
Get a picture,
No.
get some scat.
No, it's legal. You get your
It's
tag.
legal.
Get
I
your
know what I'm
Bigfoot.
saying. If I don't get my tag and I get a Bigfoot, am I poaching? Am I going to
Yes.
go to prison?
Yes.
Okay, so here we go. Only old buildings are haunted. And this is
Myth.
definitely
That's
a myth.
totally BS. I'm going to say some of the
Absolutely
craziest homes I've ever investigated with the craziest happenings have been brand new construction.
Do you remember that one we did? It was like 6 months old, and the
Didn't
family
even
was
have the
so
grass in it?
terrified that they lived in their parents' basement.
Yes, and it was like a beautiful, like multi-million-dollar home. Yeah, I remember that one vividly.
Oh, I walked in. I'm like, I love this house. Can I have it?
Yeah,
but-
and they're just about like, yes, you can, because we don't want it because it's got the demons in it.
And it did. Number 5, America's paranormal fascination is new.
That's
That's
BS.
a myth.
Absolutely a myth. It was very popular in about the 1940s. It got very popular in 1897. I mean, the whole Victorian area is
Well, honestly, I
full
mean,
of dead
Abraham
people.
Lincoln spent how many hours going to seances and stuff trying to communicate with their dead children because they're so torn up over.
Right.
In fact, it even says here, Mary Todd Lincoln, Mark Twain, Harry Houdini
Yeah.
were very, very fascinated with
And I'd venture to
paranormal.
guess if you went through time that on some level, every civilization's had some fascination, which honestly, in and of itself, is kind of a proof of paranormal in and of itself. I mean, because if it was something that was just cropped up 20 years ago, it'd be like, yeah, that's made up. But
The
honestly,
longevity.
the longevity means people are seeing and experiencing something that is drawing their attention one way or another. And I don't think it's been handed down century over century. That just doesn't make sense to me that it would be that consistent over that amount of time without something real fueling it.
Exactly, I agree. So number 6 is aliens are little green men in flying saucers. So we're coming back to the aliens, revisiting
I saw
aliens.
that Mars Attack documentary.
That other documentary that came on after Ghostbusters.
So I have seen, when I was in college, I worked at an observatory in Cedar City, and I spent a lot of time looking at the sky. They had a dome down there with a telescope, and spent a lot of hours. I have seen things that I can't explain. That being said, it wasn't that far from Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas. So, who knows?
I'm not going to say they don't exist or they couldn't exist because that's just stupid to say that. But I think there are a lot of things that are legit that are, like you said, Air Force Base stuff and things that we just don't necessarily understand.
Right. So,
Right. I had an experience in Pleasant Grove. This was probably 25 years ago. I was outside, and this is just seeing something. It was in the evening in the summer. It wasn't dark yet, and some kind of an aircraft or something just went across Timpanogos. I couldn't put it together. It wasn't making sense of the speed and the size and the distance. You know how things at certain distances are so fast. And I've seen jets go across Timpanogos, in front of Timpanogos in those areas. It was a completely different kind of a speed and an experience.
Well, it's interesting because there are a lot of things we just can't explain as far as the sky goes. I mean, as you tell the story, I just recalled a memory I had. I remember I was probably in my mid-30s. I was sitting at my computer. It was probably like 2 a.m. I was, doing work on the computer. The sky, like my windows, and I was in a room with a ton of windows. It got bright as noonday outside for just a few seconds. But I mean, it was dark as night. Next thing I know, it's just brilliant white light through all my windows, and then nothing. And not white like someone shining a spotlight in my window. I mean, like the whole sky was like like daytime all of a sudden, and then gone. I look outside and I don't see anything. There's nothing on the news the next day. I have no idea what it was. No idea.
aliens.
So,
Yeah, so apparently they're not green, they're gray.
Okay.
So with big black buggy eyes and a slit for a mouth on their oversized noggin. And that's what the paper says, oversized noggin. They also
I
have...
think that's the scientific term.
It is. And they've also reported aggressive reptilians and blonde-haired Nordic humanoids. So little and green, no, but gray with black buggy eyes.
And tall with blonde hair
And
and,
tall with blonde
Nordic
hair.
looking.
well, and it's
Right.
if you go back
Lovely.
through the archive, and
Hiking.
it's been a while since I've messed with the archive, so I don't know how many of the old episodes are still in the archive.
They're all there.
They're all there.
We had an episode where we talked about different alleged alien species, and there are actually quite a few. So if you're interested in aliens, go back and listen to that episode. I can promise you it's terrible because I am not an expert on aliens. Neither was Tim, who did it with me at the time.
Are any of us experts on aliens? Number 7, no one still believes in vampires. And I am sorry if you believe this, you live under a rock, because there's whole subcultures of people that get teeth and implants and think that they are actually vampires.
And
It's
drink blood.
A
It's
little
weird.
bit bigger in the UK, I think, than it is in the States, but it's here.
Yes, it's very big in paranormal pop culture. 8, modern zombies are supernatural. So this has been a term that's been used for well over a century, and before 1968, it was applied to what they call seemingly soulless slaves created by Haitian voodoo magic. But then, if you remember, George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead was released, kind of the term changed to what we think of zombies as now.
Not to go into movie culture, but George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, that particular movie actually changed zombie culture. I mean, that had as big an impact on, air quotation, zombies as Star Wars did on science fiction. I mean, that spawned Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, The
And then
Living
the
Dead.
series.
I mean,
The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
The Walking Dead. I mean, all that, the whole zombie culture. In fact,
Zombieland.
yeah, all of it is World War Z.
That documentary.
That all spawned off of that one movie. And when you think zombies, you think, dead walking around eating people, basically.
Right. So number 9, skeptics and believers don't get along. And absolutely a myth in my mind, because I love having a skeptic around, because I think you balance each other. If you get too into every, knock and crack is a demon, your skeptic is going to say, is it really? The sun just came up, it's the siding cracking on your house. Come on, be real. But the believer can say, you know what, not necessarily every bump and crackle is scientific. It could be a ghost
It's funny,
talking.
you say that, and I think of the Fort Douglas Military Museum. We've investigated that, I don't know how many countless times. Cool venue, by the way. There's a metal roof in part of that. And at night, when you're in there, it makes these popping and cracking sounds that are clearly the roof cooling if you're familiar with the building. But I've been in there with new investigators. They're like, oh my gosh, did you hear that? Oh, that's paranormal. No, it's the roof cracking.
Yeah, so if you get an open-minded skeptic, I'm a closed-minded skeptic. I'm sorry if you're listening. You're all a little annoying, but you're probably not listening to a paranormal podcast,
Right.
But if you're a skeptic but you're open-minded, that's awesome, and I love having those open-minded skeptics with us on the team. If you're a believer, you also need to be open-minded to the fact that not everything is paranormal.
Well,
They're just as annoying when everything is demon.
yeah. I say open-minded believers, open-minded skeptics are my two favorite people because they are open-minded. It's the people who every pop and crack is a demon, and the person who every full-figure apparition is the bad burrito that I had for lunch. Those people are obnoxious because you can have a ghost doing a conga line in front of them. They're like, nope, it's not real. Open-minded is the best, in my opinion.
Right. And so the last one is the paranormal is bad for business. A lot of people think, if it's haunted, no one will want to come here, when it's exactly the opposite. The paranormal world is really popular.
Speaking of
Wow.
family tree, that business made
Bank.
piles of
Oh,
money
yeah.
from us alone doing investigations there,
And the
because when we
dead
did church
files.
tickets there, they kept a large portion of that money for the ticket price that we had there. And in fact, at one point, they told us that the ghost hunts are what were keeping them afloat when they had a patch of hard financial times. And so, yeah, any business that has been involved in Dead Files or any other paranormal show, or the word gets out, people want to go check that out. Paranormal is actually really good for business.
Right. So we were recently in the South, Chad and I, and on an upcoming podcast, we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth. When you check into the hotel and they've got all the little pamphlets, everywhere we went and everywhere I've been in the past, one of those pamphlets is
The haunted tour.
haunted tour. And like I said recently in a podcast, in a bucket list, that the next place I want to go is Charleston, because they had a pamphlet, and not just a haunted tour, they had like 8 haunted tours. So
What I don't think business owners who are like scared of having that designation understand is people who don't believe don't care. So if you're a skeptic and you don't believe in some businesses, we have ghosts, people are like, I don't care. Are your cheese fries good?
You have good vittles?
Yeah. Is your food good? And honestly, those who might believe, or the open-minded skeptics, the believers,
They're curious. It
they're
might bring 'em
curious.
in.
They're going to go for the
Oh,
cheese
yeah.
fries, but they also might go just to see, really, what is a haunted place like?
right. And if you're an
Um,
open-minded believer, we will pay you money to come and see if there's something after you close.
Yeah, hint, hint, businesses. And so it's kind of funny, in my opinion, when businesses are like, oh, we don't want to think we're haunted. Because again, people who don't believe don't care. And those who are curious are going to come just because they're curious, whether your food sucks or not.
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you have a bucket list? We have a bucket list is one of our things nowadays.
I do have a bucket list. So
Just one thing on the bucket list. Save the others for later.
I'll put this notebook away then. If I could go and so let me bucket list like
It can be a thing. It can be a place. It can be I would love to meet this person, dead or alive. Just
if I had my bucket list thing that I would like to go do. Can I have two? I have two.
You can
Sure.
have two.
Okay, give me
I
two.
guess you can have
Okay.
two.
I would love to investigate Waverly Manor, which I think everybody would.
Yes.
Because that place is friggin' amazing. That would be my first one. And that one's actually doable. Actually, all mine are doable. And then the next one, I would love to see Ed and Lorain's cursed object collection.
Oh, I would go with you to that one.
that would be fun.
Absolutely.
You know,
Didn't you have some spoons or something from that, or was that from?
I do have the Amityville spoons. I had the opportunity actually to talk to Lorain Warren before she died several years ago. Probably would have been the early 2000s, probably like 2005. I spoke with Lorain Warren, had a good hour-long conversation on the phone with her. Really neat lady. This is just before Ed passed away. Ed was in poor health, but I had the chance to talk with her. And I was actually getting information on how to go out and see their collection. I actually called the number not expecting for Lorain to actually answer the phone. I thought for certain I'd get an assistant or something along those lines, but Lorain answered and we had a good conversation. But I would really love to go out and see their collection.
Right.
would
Do
be
you
amazing.
follow Tony Spera, their son-in-law?
I'm familiar with Tony. I've not actually followed him.
He's doing a lot with their collection and trying to get it out there, and he's trying to do some kind of a big expo to put like Annabelle out there.
Oh,
and-
good. See, Annabelle's one I would like to see. Now, as far as Donna's asking about, I do have some spoons from Amityville. I have those. They were given to Jimmy Chunga from the Radio Ronan podcast, directly from the Warrens. These spoons are in shadow boxes, and they are mounted on the bed sheets that the actual DeFeos were murdered on. These spoons are allegedly cursed, and bad things happen if you try and sell them or do anything other than give them away as a gift.
So you got them as a gift?
I did. And I actually store those spoons. They stay in my garage. Keep them stored with selenite and salt, and I keep them in a way that basically they're not going to be a problem for me and my family. But I do have those spoons.
And do you have it marked or something? So what happens when you pass on or it gets lost so people understand what's in that shadow box?
Someone is totally screwed. That's what's going to happen.
Great. 'Cause we
It
did
won't
one
be
on
me.
curses, and now I'm like seeing this as a future curse ending up somewhere. You know, somebody's going to buy this little cool, oh, look at these cool spoons. And
Yeah. You and I just met tonight for the first time, Rogue. But one of my things, I don't purport to be a psychic or medium or anything along those lines. I'm just not. But if I did say I had a spiritual gift, I can pick out a cursed object in a room like that, like I snap my fingers. I can walk into a room and like look at something and go, that's a problem.
okay.
I honestly don't get much of a vibe off these spoons. I know that other people have talked about having issues with the spoons.
Yeah.
I spent quite a bit of time when I first got them cleansing them.
Okay.
You know, people are like, well, what do you mean by cleansing them? You know, letting them sit in sunlight, just all the things you do to cleanse a crystal. Use crystals that are commonly used for cleansing, aka selenite, obsidian, things like that. I've stored those around it. I just don't get the bad vibes off of those that I think are there. So I don't know if there's anything still attached to those, or if it's at bay, or if it's gone. I don't know.
So if you're new to the podcast and haven't heard, my skill is psychometry, which is
that
touching
was-
something and
yeah.
feeling the energy.
Have you touched
And I
it?
have actually, I haven't touched the spoons, but I've touched the box.
Okay.
And I don't get the feeling that I thought I would get, kind of like you said. There's definitely,
They definitely have a vibe.
they have a vibe. They have a very heavy feel, but I thought it would feel heavier,
Interesting.
considering what and where.
If you were
they're
to ask
from.
me if there's a negative spirit or even any spirit attached to those, at this point I would say definitely not.
No.
But they've definitely been exposed to a bad environment. That's probably the best way I could describe those
You can tell
things.
that sweet little grandma didn't just make tea with them on Sunday.
Oh.
Yeah, you can tell they came from somewhere bad. When I walk into a room that has like an object that's got a problem, I almost get like tunnel vision on it, and it's like my eyes just can't leave the object. I'm like, oh, that thing.
You're just really
that-
drawn to it.
Kind of like
Yeah.
a rock holding a door open in Twila.
Yeah, like that particular investigation that
Oh.
we went to 3 times. When we walked in, like that rock is a problem. And
Yeah.
we took the rock and the problem went away.
Castle,
Yes,
you took a little sabbatical.
I did take a little sabbatical, and I will pop in from time to time now for guest appearances.
Yeah, see, as the big sister, I can like twist his arm and
You will come podcast.
give him a noogie.
No, so just so everyone's wondering where I've been and where I'm at and where I will be. So I had to take a break. And there's some reasons why, and I'll get into those, and we're going to do a tell-all expose right here, right now.
Ooh.
Cool.
Just to be really clear, Beaker, Tim, is still my friend. I like Tim, I like Beaker, but we did have some differences of opinions on the direction of this podcast, apps, WISPs, etc. Deanna and I actually founded WISPs back in 2012 and set it up and got it going. And then we formed apps as the kind of the commercial venture to house the podcast under. And
also the events.
And the events.
The paranormal events where
because
we charge. And
we didn't feel good doing that under WISPs because we wanted that to be a completely nonprofit. We didn't want to accept any money, won't accept any money for residential investigations or business investigations. But to fund that, I mean, web hosting costs money, podcasting equipment costs money, sometimes venues cost money. I mean, there has to be an income source. And initially, Deanna and I were paying for these things out of pocket. It was just kind of like, okay, I guess I'm going to eat rice this month because I need to buy this
Business
or
cards or
yeah. Or we were having the members be like, hey, you can be a member of WISP, but you need to pay us $20 so that we can buy your business cards and, whatever else. Honestly, we thought it'd be better if the organization could support itself. And so we started the business end of apps, which is the events and things like that, now onto the Patreon. And that helps support that and support us so we can do this. The vision that Deanna and I had initially was basically just that, to support the organization. Tim had a different idea. He wanted to become a self-sustaining business with office space and to quit jobs and be able to have it be like an occupation. And honestly, in my opinion, I didn't think, and I still don't think that's really a realistic expectation. I don't think the market is big enough to support that.
as we were sitting here in the attic of despair with curtains hanging from the ceiling to
Exactly.
help soundproof the room.
Exactly. And so I think the intention was good. I know there was talk of having apps do a paranormal conference, and that honestly kind of scared me to death because I'd been to several of those and they looked like they were commercial failures. I mean, they were cool events, but honestly, for what they're paying to bring in celebrities and
it
everything
can
else.
be very, very expensive.
Right.
Oh, yeah, like $5,000 just for your booth space.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, I mean, I saw a lot of booths come in. I saw a lot of celebrities come in. And in my mind, I'm seeing the money rack up to do that.
And you're not seeing a lot of
I'm not
people
seeing a lot of
coming
people coming in
and
to
buying the tickets?
To buy tickets. And honestly, if you don't have the people coming in to buy tickets, your vendors are going to be pissed off and they're not going to come back. You're going to end up having to pay for celebrities out of pocket. And so those things were kind of had me concerned. And so we had some different philosophies there. And then ultimately, I was just getting remarried. I decided that my focus needed to be more on my family. And then on top of that, I also have started a photography business on the side. My webpage is castlenaturestudio.com, where I take landscape and wildlife photos and sell those prints, and which necessitated a lot of travel on my part because I have to drive to where animals are at because there's not that many around here compared to, say, Yellowstone or the Tetons or...
If you go up here by the golf course, there's lots of bighorn sheep.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know there's bighorn sheep here. How many?
Oh, a whole herd of them. Come hang out at the golf course.
How about that? I just found a new spot. Anyway, so with all of that, I just didn't have the time to dedicate anymore. And with the difference of philosophies, there was some tension that didn't need to be there. Like I said, Tim and I are still friends. I think Tim's an amazing guy. I know he's no longer with the podcast and he's off doing his own thing as well. But it was just, there were some tensions there that just needed to be resolved before we weren't friends anymore, if that makes sense. So that's where I've been and what I've been up to. I still talk with Deanne and consult with Deanne quite a bit on cases, and she's asked me to come back and guest host on podcasts from time to time. So I may still pop in and say howdy.
Say how.
How? And say hi. Edit that out, Don. Edit that out. Me talk good. That's good spelled G-U-D. So that's where I've been. What else do you want to
Awesome.
know?
Really want you to invite all of your friends to listen to the Supernatural Hour podcast. We're trying to increase our listenership and get people to enjoy what we're doing. And
All right. Well, let's talk about some residentials.
It's been a little slow just this last week, but it can't be super busy all the time.
That's
But
very true.
we are still pretty heavy Utah County spooky. Although Salt Lake County, you're stepping up your game. We got a Salt Lake County one coming.
I
So
was excited.
tell us about the one that we were on just
Well,
on.
we were back out in Utah County, and we were back visiting some of our friends that I believe we refer to them just as, is it Halloween face?
Scary Halloween.
Scary Halloween. They called us back out. I think it's been, about 2 or 3, 4 weeks since we've been out there with them
For the first time?
the first time.
Yeah, about that. 4 or
Yeah.
5 weeks ago.
So they called us back out. They have a beautiful little 2-year-old who likes to point and say scary Halloween. And the dad, help remind me here, Dad was getting touched. Did he
was
get
getting
touched?
touched. Dad is sensitive. And so he was seeing a lot of things, hearing a lot of things. And if you're hearing things and seeing things and it's new and unusual for you, it can be pretty scary.
Right. Scary for the whole family, actually, because again, we walked into a situation where they really just don't understand what's going on. I really like this one. This was the one with the little kid and with the dog again.
Right.
I liked how we worked with this one. So with this one, we made a phone call. Can you tell us a little bit more about that phone call?
Yeah, so we figured that with the dad being sensitive, we just really needed to teach him how to take control of when and where and how he dealt with these spirits. And what a lot of people don't realize or they forget is they have ultimate control. And they can tell these spirits when and where they want to communicate. It's as easy as saying, you know what, I'm not into it tonight. I'm going to be asleep. You need to be quiet. If you tell these spirits what to do and when the appropriate times are, then they'll listen to you.
Right. Agreed. We have to remember there's free will.
Right. So we talked to him and explained how to go about keeping himself safe and how to set the parameters for himself and for his family. And, most kids, if you listen to our episode about child spirits, children are a lot more open.
So the little girl's a little sensitive. And she's been being touched.
Yes, and she's getting that sensitivity from both sides of the family because it sounds like it's pretty prevalent from mom and dad's side.
Yeah, that's right. So when we were there last time, we left the 2 9-year-old children's spirits. Speaking of children's spirits, so we had left them there. The family was okay having them there.
Right. And the reason we had to make a phone call is I can cross a spirit that wants to go because you basically just help them, tell them it's time to go and help them see what they're looking for and to go. But this one did not want to go on its own.
Right.
And I don't know,
They wanted to stay and play with the little girl.
Right. And so I actually had to make a phone call to someone who can do that. When we called him, he zoned in on something that we had not told him. We had closed 2 portals there, and one of them had opened back up. One of these spirits that we left in the home opened it back up. So we didn't tell him that. We just said, hey, we've got some spirits that need to cross, but they won't go on their own. We need to, remove them from the home, which he can do. And one of the first things he said to me, he says, there's a portal back in the 2-year-old's bedroom.
Right?
Yes.
And he just pulled that right out.
I didn't tell him that. He just knew it. So he said that there were actually 2 little children there, but they were hiding and huddled. And what we had read as 2 children were 2 darker entities posing as those children. The fellow that we called cleared everything out. We helped the dad walk through the steps to set some healthy parameters for himself and his family.
Right.
And I felt like it was a pretty good investigation.
We also left them some of our special new product, our sage spray, to help them feel comfortable in their home and to help their little girl feel comfortable in their home.
Right. And we told them, to also teach her to not be afraid because these kind of spirits really feed off of fear. And the less fear you show, the less power you give to them. And so he's teaching them. He's teaching his daughter how to not be scared. And he said that her and her brother one day were jumping on the bed saying, go away, go away. And I thought, there you go.
Yes.
Teach them to set parameters when they're little for those spirits that want to come in.
Right. And then they're not scared to face them.
Right. So then we had one other investigation, and this one is one that just Chad and I went on. It's a neighbor, actually, didn't live very far away. The mother in the home had just gone through some chemotherapy, and so we didn't want to traipse a whole team in there. They weren't afraid of what's in their home. They're just sensitive, and they could tell that something was there, and they pretty much just wanted to know what was there, who was there. We determined that it was, again, 2 child spirits. One was about a 10-year-old girl, and the other was about a 12-year-old boy. And they were pretty much just playing with the family. The family had a dog. They've got some teenage girls in the home, ranged from probably 11 to 18-ish, I want to say. And just we're chilling and just doing things like they would turn off and on lights. They would hear knocks. They would hear footsteps. Nothing too crazy or out of the ordinary. And so we chatted with them through the dowsing rods for a little while, and the spirits wanted to stay, and the family was fine with them staying. So it was a pretty benign investigation.
So it just helped them to feel comfortable with whom else they were sharing their space with.
Right. And if this is your first time listening to our podcast, the one that we posted just before this, we talk about child spirits. And I know a lot of people kind of struggle with child spirits. I have some caveats, but again, you can go listen to our child spirit episode.
Child spirits are interesting, and again, not to kind of probably double up on what you guys did in your last episode, but they are real. I mean, we've encountered actual real child spirits that are genuinely children, but people need to be careful with them because there's also a lot of really dark, evil type 3 spirits which can pose as child spirits, hoping that you'll interact with them as children and give them free rein and invite into certain aspects of your life. So
right, like Scary Halloween. There were 2 children there, but they were hiding and had some darker spirits that were impersonating them.
And that's why it's important, when you're even dealing with paranormal stuff, to make sure you get someone involved like the APS team or the WISP team, just because they can come in and kind of help figure out the difference between the two. Trying to mess with that on your own, you can really get yourself into a bind if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you're actually dealing with.
Right.
But that's kind of where experience matters, so to speak.
Exactly. And again, if you want to hear more about our feelings on child spirits, listen to the podcast that was posted just before this one. If you are a Patreon, one thing that all the Patreon gets, despite what level, is you get to see what we're doing for the whole quarter. So if you want to know what our events are in advance, that's the way to find out.
And you get to listen to special podcasts.
By the way, if you guys are contributing through Patreon and you're contributing by coming to the ghost hunts and things like that, the money from those kind of things is actually what keeps this thing afloat. It's kind of what pays for the equipment. It's what pays for the web hosting. Nobody's doing this to get rich. By
for the
any stretch of
taxes?
the imagination. Yeah. No one's doing this so they can pay extra taxes and have a confusing tax bill this time of year when they're trying to do their taxes. The Patreon stuff, the ghost hunts, it all comes back to keeping things up and running, and it's kind of a labor of love for Raven and Chad and Rogue, and who's your other host I'm replacing tonight?
Doc.
It's kind of a labor of love, and honestly, it allows us to buy equipment and things of that nature. So please, feel free to contribute. Feel free to come take part in those investigations. I've been involved in those in the past, and we do our best to make those really fun and entertaining for everybody. And honestly, you see some pretty cool things, and you have some pretty cool experiences if you can come on those that you just are not going to get every day. I think more than a few of us have sat around and go, are ghosts real? And we sit around our house and go, I don't think so. I don't see anything. But when you get out on an investigation and you know what you're doing, or you're with someone who knows what they're doing, and they can show you some evidence and show you some experiences, it makes it all worthwhile. So, you look at the price of a ticket, and I don't know what you guys are charging because I haven't looked at your recent events, but it's a pretty small price for a really fun evening and a chance to potentially see something really cool. But it's amazing because you go in and you see some really cool stuff. Family Tree, for instance, is now closed, but I saw a full-figure apparition at Family Tree. Where are you going to see that at? I've been...
Benson Gristmill.
Or the mausoleum. There's a lot of places you can see that, but unless you're going with someone who knows what they're doing and you're going to a place that is known to be haunted, you're not going to see that. So anyway, if you get a chance, go sign up, become a Patreon. You get some of the perks there. Like I said, it helps support the show. It keeps things moving. It keeps the wheels greased. The more support that we have at Supernatural Hour, the better content we can bring, the more content we can bring. And that includes the ghost hunts. So tell your friends about it. Invite your friends over. Bring a friend with you. But yeah, keep your eyes open for those events. And as Raven was saying, if you sign up as a patron, you get a quarter's worth of information, so you know what's coming well ahead of time.
As an insider. Yeah, and along with that, you can get there from the Advanced Paranormal page. and click the Supernatural Hour tab, and it'll show the episodes, and then it has a link right there to the Patreon page where you can become a patron. We're also going to be getting some additional investigations going, so be looking at our site for the new investigation. Okay, let's talk about our swag merchandise. You can get Supernatural Hour swag on advancedparanormal.com. Go to the merchandise tag. You'll link to TeePublic, and there you can see t-shirts, sweatshirts, banners, or as we call them, tapestries. We've got one right here in the studio.
It's pretty awesome.
Behind Castle. And Raven is wearing a Supernatural Hour t-shirt right now as we're
Hoodie.
talking.
It's a hoodie.
It's a hoodie?
It's a hoodie.
It's nice.
Okay.
It's wintertime. It's hoodie weather.
And I've got my Supernatural Hour mug. Go to our website and do that. Also, if you become a patron, we'll send out swag and merchandise through there also.
You get a free t-shirt if you become a Patreon.
Well,
And
not
you-
just a Patreon. You got to get a certain level.
I know.
And you'll get insight into all the upcoming investigations, and you'll keep this awesome show afloat. And
And we might even bring Castle back.
yeah, I might come back.
Cool.
I have a $5,000 appearance fee, but
Oh,
Wow.
I'll waive it.
Woo!
All right.
okay.
Stay spooky, my haunty friends.
We came.
Hey, good night.
We saw.
I love you, Nicholas.
We kicked ass. It's not fun I do by myself.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright by Advanced Paranormal Services.